one of the things that I found striking in your book, and you mentioned it earlier in the podcast, was that because of the commercial push behind Vioxx, I did some content on my social media talking about Humira, which I think is the current drug that gets the most marketing dollars. I think it's $500 million a year is spent marketing Humira, a monoclonal antibody for psoriasis and some of these autoimmune conditions, and psoriatic arthritis.
And arthritis was the first indication.
Yeah. And $500 million go into marketing that drug. And I think you said something like maybe 300 million went into some of these other drugs. I'm maybe making the numbers up, but I mean, these were hundreds of millions of dollars of advertising dollars. And you as a physician had patients coming into your office demanding that you prescribe that drug, which is the psychology here is crazy to me. And I've spoken about this, but we can just touch on the fact that the United States is one of only 2 countries in the world that allows direct to consumer marketing of pharmaceuticals. And then if you really think that's benign,
let me just interject a fact. The other country that allows direct to consumer marketing of pharmaceuticals is New Zealand, but they have such an active and aggressive pharmaceutical program that they spend the least among developed countries on drugs, and we spend the most. So it's not just the advertising; it's what you let to go on, around the advertising that's really matters.
And then if people thought this is a free market, because I heard you talk about this, the fact that because these drugs, like they help some people, they're not regulated. They are protected under the First Amendment, right? And then the patients come into doctors' offices and they put doctors in a bad position. So this is crazy. I don't understand it.
Except the doctors don't think they're in such a bad position because the drug reps are coming in, bringing the article from the New England Journal that says it's a good drug. So the doctor thinks that he or she is practicing good medicine, and the patient thinks that he or she is getting good medicine. And the only problem is it's not good medicine.
Because the doctors don't actually know what's going on behind the scenes. And I worked as a physician assistant in cardiology before I went back to medical school. It's hard. Somebody that's not a physician or a healthcare practitioner, when you're in an office setting with a patient and they're sitting across from you and they're saying, "Doctor, I really want to be prescribed this drug," it puts you in a hard position, because if you say, "I don't think that's the best drug for you," even if you were so savvy, which you may be misled in the first place because of all this, then the patient's going to be pissed.
Exactly. Not just pissed that you're not agreeing to their request or demand, but pissed because you're going to look like you're not up to date. Like they're more up to date than you are. And the drug companies know that. They know what they're playing with. When you see those drug ads on TV and they say, "Ask your doctor," it's like, your doctor's not going to stand up to this. Go talk to your doctor, because you're going to get the drug.
So is it just, like we said, is it just because is it because of lobbying? And you talk in Sickening about the amount of money spent by pharmaceutical companies on lobbying. The First Amendment, there must have been legal precedents that protect these pharmaceutical advertisements on television. Could we ever get rid of these? They're irrevocably protected by the First Amendment now?
I don't think we're going to get rid of them, but that doesn't mean that they can't do a public service. Because what we have now is this charade where the FDA says you have to list the side effects, and that's why it says you're going to die and your limbs are going to fall off and you'll never have sex again, kinds of things. The FDA says you got to say all those side effects. And that's supposed to balance the message so that viewers get a realistic message. They don't get a realistic message. A realistic message on Vioxx would have been 1 out of every 40 people who takes Vioxx has a serious complication. And if you told that, you're not going to sell, and it's no more effective than the older drugs, and it costs 10 times more, you're not going to sell many drugs. So the way it's set up now, the advertisements have to conform with the letter of the law, but the law doesn't say that we're going to do post-viewing testing on consumers and make sure that you've communicated the information that they need to make a rational decision about whether this drug would be helpful. That is not forbidden by the First Amendment. That is just that doesn't happen is a simple representation of the influence that the pharmaceutical industry has over the FDA.
I recently did some content on a Chantix ad. You've probably seen it. It's on YouTube. It's an older gentleman sitting on a bench and it's talking about smoking and, Chantix can help you quit smoking. And then it goes into the side effects and it's just a chill music and it's a gentleman sitting on a park bench with his wife and they're talking about the side effects and the side effects of Chantix, varenicline, this medication that treats, smoking addiction are myriad and
right.
Suicide, depression, all kinds of things, like really serious side effects. And in my mind, I'm thinking in the middle of this conversation, if that ad were really accurate, they would show, I don't think they have to show somebody committing suicide, but they would they have to show some sort of visual representation of somebody who's depressed or having worsening of their psychiatric illness or,
Right.
How can you?
And the data, they would have to show the data. How many people have a psychiatric side effect that is minor, that is major, compared to how many people are helped to quit smoking? That's what the viewer needs to know, but they're not saying it.
Right. I've often thought that I don't understand why cigarettes are forced to have warning labels, but this is a little bit off topic, but similar. Foods that we know are junk food and ultra processed don't have warning labels on them. Why doesn't a Snickers bar have a warning label that says, we know that consumption of ultra processed foods like this Snickers bar is consistently associated with worse health outcomes and every type of cancer known to man, or a Lay's package, why doesn't a Snickers bar have a picture of someone getting dialysis on the side of it saying, hey, if you eat too many Snickers bars, you probably are going to get diabetes and you're going to get dialysis, which means you have to be at a kidney center or you're going to lose a toe or a foot. It's so interesting to me. And I think there are parallels between the ultra processed food industry and the pharmaceutical industry, probably in the way that they lobby Congress. But do we need stronger warning labels on packages? Like, do pharmacists need to say to patients when they get a drug, like, hey, this drug actually has some pretty bad side effects and the risk of the bad side effects is this. And, you may actually not, then the physicians would feel like they're getting undermined by the pharmacists.
Well, in an ideal world, that information would be available to everybody and it would have to be on the ads. If you marketed Vioxx and said 1 out of 40 people who takes this is not going to benefit, they're going to get seriously hurt, you're not going to sell much Vioxx.